Yes, it's me again. And deja vu, same shirt, same background. Yes, I'm recording back to back videos. We'll release them, try to release them one at a time. But today, let's do a malpractice story just for fun. But before we do, this idiot, Ben Shapiro, one of the MAGAs, the followers that really pushed vote for Trump. And I blame people for not being more educated, but it's hard to be educated when you are given so much disinformation. Well, he's supporting the insurance companies and saying things about how we shouldn't question things and so forth. So I think people are starting to see how deep the corruption goes, how people are being paid off. That includes politicians on both sides, one side more than the other. But so, I hope by now you all realize that we're saying, well, I don't want Obamacare. I like ACA, but I don't want Obamacare. They're the same thing. So, those of you who voted because maybe you were supporting the person that's going to get rid of Obamacare with a concept of a plan to replace it, you're going to find out you just voted against your benefits, your health insurance. The man who's going to reduce or take away, already talking about food stamps, wanting to overhaul HUD, wanting to get rid of Medicaid, wanting to overhaul HUD. And of course, I'm sure at some point they'll cut retirement and disability too. They'll start with Medicare and SNAP because they're handouts, but they'll still call or entitlements. That's their favorite word. The entitlements that we've paid into our whole life, the entitlements, my disability is my money. I get SSDI from over 25 years of wiping asses and taking care of the dying and the sick. That's my money. And I'm sure he's going to cut it. And I'm sure I can barely get by, which is why I'm taking actions to prepare for all the shitstorm coming. And if, whether you're rich or not, whether you're poor or not, I really recommend that you start stockpiling in the next month. It's late. I only thought of this. Stockpiling canned vegetables, fruits, basics, flour, toilet paper, because people are going to panic and do stupid things again, like they did before. People created the toilet paper shortage with their hoarding and their greed and their complete disregard for other people, going to the store and buying every single one. People profiting off of the shortages. We're going to have that again, too, you can bet. So take care of yourself first and foremost. I'm going to start putting a PayPal link down below in case people want to donate. But do not donate unless you can truly afford it. There are people worse off than me. God help the people on SSI. SSI is for people who didn't work or didn't work enough. So we have a whole generation, mostly women, whose spouses have died, and maybe they were the breadwinner. The woman stayed home, she kept the house. She was a trad wife, which, for the record, if you really want to be a traditional wife and stay at home, do your thing, more power to you. But let the rest of us make that decision and stop trying to shove it down our throats. But anyway, the people on SSI, mostly women who are widowed, have to get by on about $1,000 a month. And that's one of the things you can bet will be reduced in this administration. Even with HUD, if you can get into HUD, let me tell you, it's not easy unless you find a really bad one that is desperate for people, which actually does happen quite a bit. But some people wait for years. So think about that. Put in your applications now. I am in a HUD. I am making, well, I might as well just say it. I have been wanting to be European for years. And on November 5th, and I had actually even worked with a company in Poland that arranges teachers for English. And so, but November 5th, I said, that's it. I'm done. I want to spend my later years in Europe. So I am working to leave the country. And with certain countries, your benefits will go with you for now. With SSI, 30 days out of the country, you lose your benefits, unfortunately. They are talking about food stamps, overhauling it. Maybe they're going to have a work requirement, which isn't an entirely bad thing. Because let me tell you, there are people that take advantage of the system. There are people that that's all they know in life is getting benefits. That's all they aspire to. When I was in a certain, I won't say where, my landlord had people working for cash under the table. They were all in the system getting SNAP, getting the benefits. And when I got into HUD, one of them said to me, "Oh, my son wants to get in there. He's 18 years old. This is all he wants in life." There's a whole generation that expect to have things given to them. And that's why people are so angry. And they should be. So it is an entirely bad thing to try to require work of some kind for people getting benefits, like benefits that are not based on what they've paid in, like SNAP, Medicaid. But there are some of us who really can't work or can't get a job. I tried for 2 years to get a job after I became disabled. Nursing threw me away because they couldn't work me to death. I talked about that in the last video. They couldn't pull me to the floor to cover for call outs or holes in the schedule, so forth. I couldn't do on call. So they didn't want me. I tried to get jobs with insurance companies. Seems logical, although I probably wouldn't have lasted long because I would have approved everything. I'm for you, people. Would have been like, but just them. It would have fired my ass. So, but I did try, and I even did some interviews. I think it was with United. But that's probably why I didn't get hired. All this time I've been thinking that they thought, oh, she's overqualified. Once she gets better, she'll go back to nursing. They probably thought because they do hire nurses to do utilization review, but because I'm disabled, I would be more sympathetic to people. I interviewed and it went well, and I'm like, yeah, okay. They didn't call me back. I just realized that's probably why they want people that don't give a shit about other people and will just be clinical, cold hearted. That's not me. Well, it is sometimes after the last 5 years, since my life is divided into two parts: before disability or before stroke and after stroke. Before stroke, it was me. After stroke, I'm like, fuck y'all, I'm taking care of me, you know, because nobody else ever has. And speaking of which, let's get into that a little bit. My parents have been deceased for a long time. My mother in 94, my dad in 99, and I have three siblings. Well, no, actually, I'm an orphan. You know why? Because when I had my stroke, my family, my siblings, the pieces of shit that they are, abandoned me. Now, I expect this from the older ones, the twins, virtually the same astrology chart. That's why when I couldn't do nursing anymore, I'm like, to hell with it. I'm going to do what I want to do. So I'm learning astrology and all this stuff. And I love it. I enjoy it. It is actually frighteningly accurate when you really get into it. But anyway, the twins, the older ones, let's just say on the January 6th footage, I was looking for them there, but they're good Christians. They're hypocrites. Now, my younger sister, I'd always been close to, and I always felt like she was the only person in the world that understood me, even though she would fail to reach out to me or do much for me. I still had that place to go to feel at home. She even made fun of my older siblings with me, especially my older sister, about her whole religious thing and being uptight. Well, she stabbed me in the back too. And that was the true et tu, Brute moment. It cut me to the bone. My family abandoned me and left me to die or be homeless or whatever would happen to me. I could not work. I could not get a job except teaching English online. I spent 3.5 years to get my disability, living on about $300 to $500 a month in HUD on food stamps, unless a writing freelance gig came in. And they didn't come in very often. I spent all my time trying to apply to them. So if anybody has any freelance writing, anyway, or if you need your chart read for astrology by a student at a deep discount, like when you go to the beauty schools to get your hair cut. Yeah. Anyway, that's the other channel I've been working on and not doing very good with it. But back to this channel and the reason that we're here. So stockpile your canned goods. Dollar Tree or the dollar stores, Dollar General, whichever one I have by me. Dollar General, I guess. You know, almost any can of vegetables is under $1. So stockpile those for the upcoming tariffs. And until then, I'm still buying the frozen vegetables as long as I can. I just want to have a backup. And if God forbid, you know, we have a storm or something and or get snowed in, so do that. Definitely. But anyway, so we all expect we're going to lose benefits. One of my TAs in my class for astrology goes to college on Pell Grants for now. She relies on those. You can bet when the Department of Education disappears, so will her Pell Grants and many others, I'm sure. That affects their livelihood, their ability to make a living. But you know, there's there's an overarching theme to this because if you keep people from being educated or put them in so much debt, then basically you're a slave to having to earn a living or accept lower wages, take any job you can. This is what the wealthy want to do, along with all the healthcare nonsense. But sometimes we just don't do the right thing, do a good job. And when I worked at a hospital for the indigent, they'll still bill you. Don't get me wrong. Still try to bill you. But for the indigent, the prisoners, the immigrants, the um, gang members. We would have shootouts in our ER sometimes, because the gang members will follow the ambulance to try to finish the job. So, anyway, one particular case of malpractice that is still with me a good 30 years later. A resident or intern, and I work nights. A lady came in, she was walking, she's talking, but she's having problems with her GI system. She has something called, I think it's called a paralytic ileus, where things just aren't moving through. So you gotta, you know, naturally you want to look and see what's going on. But one thing that is very pertinent here is because nothing is going through. One thing that is contraindicated that you do not want to do is a barium swallow. You don't want to do this because when you have a barium swallow, a test, and you take the barium, you need to get it out of your system after the test as soon as you can. Drink tons of water, flush it out. Because if barium sits in your system too long, it turns to concrete, basically. So this woman came in walking and talking, a little older lady with a family. And the doctor, of course, ordered a barium swallow. So she is laying on the table, flat on the table, not with her head up. And, when your GI system isn't moving, we have a tendency to vomit. So she vomits on the table, lying flat. And when she vomited, because she was lying flat, she did what we call aspiration. That barium that she threw up, she aspirated into her lungs. So it was in her lungs. Oh shit. She came to our subacute floor, and I wasn't her nurse, but I was helping the nurse that was with her. Amazing nurse. She worked in critical care too. She was one of the best nurses I've ever seen. Fairly young lady, but really brilliant. And we suctioned her lungs again and again, trying to get that barium out. We suctioned until we were getting nothing but blood. And I was helping her, trying to help her, trying to help this lady. And she wasn't talking. She was pretty much out of it, comatose, whatever. And we just kept trying to suction and listening to her lungs, and we could just hear moving up the silence in her lungs as the barium hardened and filled her lungs. And basically, she suffocated slowly. She was out of it. So hopefully, she felt nothing. And I remember it was a day shift doctor that had ordered it, and the night shift on call doctor, he would come in and just, he was like trying to figure what to do. And he was so frustrated. And there was nothing he could do. Nothing. There's nothing you can do except try to suction it out. And we just listened to her lungs slowly closing off. And the nurse that had her was like, I've never lost a patient before. She was good. She was good at anticipating there's a problem and intervening and being proactive. And she's like, I've never lost a patient before. I have a million stories like this. I help bagger and tagger. She came in walking and talking, and she went out in a body bag. And then the family came up to our floor, and they all thanked us for how hard we tried to save her and told us how wonderful we were. Didn't feel wonderful. That's that's for sure. I'm not editing. I'm not going to edit these things out. Keeping it keeping it real and all that. But that's the reality. And you see some of it, in some of the modern dramas, I guess. I don't even watch them because it's like, honey, I've lived it. I don't need to watch it on TV. But some of the absolutely horrible things we've seen, the malpractice, and the new interns or residents, you can always tell when they're new because they come on the floor and they're trying to act so they got their white lab coat on and they're trying to be so professional. And, we're like, hey, so and so has some nausea and vomiting. And they're like, what do you normally give? They're writing most of the orders with the new doctors, which is not a bad thing because we're the ones that see it day after day, hour after hour, minute after minute. They come in for 5 minutes, and a lot of them try. Some of them don't give a shit, but so a lot of them try, but they come in for 5 minutes. They're overworked too. Interns and residents, they do their day rounds and then they take turns being on call. And sometimes they just get called all night. Sometimes they deserve that. They're really assholes. Or so I've been told. Be nice to the people underneath you. Anyway, back in the days of beepers and when we used the telephones that had to put in an extension, it's like, what extension should we put in this time? The gift shop. This is at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's not open. Spoiler alert. Half an hour later. Think he's asleep yet? What number shoe? What extension? Ah, the morgue. Most of his patients end up there anyway. Yeah, we used to call him God because he thought he was God. Surgeons have such an ego. Oh my God. They're terrible. And they do have really bad behavior. I dated an intern and he was doing his surgery rotation and he told me about it, how much he hated it. But anyway, it's for another day. You can tell when they're new because they're unsure of themselves. And then they become holy terrors. And a lot of people, you got to play the game if you're a nurse. And when you get somebody who's nice, you can say, oh, okay. Well, usually we give compazine, so what is it, 10 milligrams? I can't remember now. IV every however long, every hour, whatever. But then you have some that if you say, oh, so and so's having some nausea, can I get an order for compazine? They will intentionally say, well, I'll order Phenergan. There's no allergies, just to show you they're not going to listen to a nurse because you're just a nurse. I had that happen to me one time where somebody was making rounds with the medical director, his boss. And I had been reporting symptoms that were an early indicator that something might be wrong. And he comes around with his little team, and the resident or intern is like, oh, such and such is happening. The nurse thinks, told me that this was happening, and she thinks it should be something very sarcastic. And the medical director said, well, yeah, we need to check that out. And I was going, eat it. So you have to play the game like, well, so and so has a fever and he had brain surgery and he's vomiting now. Increased intracranial fluid pressure. What do you think? Well, it's probably nothing, but should we check it out just to be safe? You have to play stupid. Some nurses do it very well, even when they don't have to. But some doctors do too. But anyway, you got to play the game to get what you need. We got our work cut out for us. So anyway, if the doctor's nice, they're probably new, but they can turn into real monsters when they get further along. And they really look at nurses like they're servants and very disrespectful. They leave big messes for us to clean up. Clean up after yourself. Maybe, you don't have time to gather up everything, but throw most of it away. Try to leave it, take 5 seconds. So that's how doctors can be. Some can be very nice, but this particular night shift on call resident, I felt so bad for him with that lady with the barium. They could do nothing. We could do nothing. There was nothing we could do except tag her and bag her. So, some more happy stories from healthcare. And I do have some funny stories too. Maybe funny even to lay people, civilians, not just to nurses. Nurses have a sick sense of humor. All the healthcare profession does. It's the way we cope. We see so much misery and death. And I always say, if I wasn't laughing, I'd be crying. It's true. It's true in life too. So, another video. I'll probably make more before the day's through and just release them one day at a time. I'm on a roll. I don't care how I look too much. I don't care how the house looks. I got books. I'm trying to go through and get rid of books from moving. Oh, good Lord, it's painful. So, anyway, thank you. If you're joining me again, I'll put a link to my PayPal. Do not donate if you can't afford it or if you don't really feel like you should. Do whatever you want, but do what's best for you. Make sure you have the money. Stockpile things for the coming difficulties. So make sure you take care of yourself and stand up for yourself. Don't let these people run over you. But don't use Dr. Google either. You need to know your limits. Don't think because you Googled something, you're an expert. You're not. We see that a lot too. And it's like, oh, somebody's been consulting Dr. Google again. It's a little more complicated. All right. Take care.